He's been called in to fix Aaron Rodgers' biggest headache. He trained the best route runners this franchise has ever had. And now, two Steelers wide receivers just put their careers in his hands. Subscribe, because what's happening in Pittsburgh right now might be the most underrated story of this entire offseason. Everyone's talking about the trade for Michael Pittman Jr. Everyone's talking about the two rookie wide receivers Pittsburgh just drafted. But almost nobody is talking about what's happening behind the scenes, away from the cameras, away from the press conferences, where two young receivers are quietly deciding who gets to be WR3 for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. And they're not doing it the normal way. They're not just showing up to voluntary workouts and running a few routes for the cameras. They went and found the one man in football who has turned into a legend among wide receivers who need to level up. They went to see the route god. Now here's a question for you before we go any further. If you were an NFL receiver sitting outside the top two spots on your depth chart, with a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback under center who has zero patience for mistakes, what would you be willing to do this summer to lock down that job? Because that's exactly the position Roman Wilson and rookie Jeremy Bernard are in right now. And the answer they came up with is fascinating. Let's set the stage first, because you need to understand just how much this wide receiver room has changed. For years, if you followed this team, you know the frustration. Pittsburgh would have one legitimate receiving threat, maybe two on a good year, and then a massive drop-off after that. It was a running joke. Who's catching passes number 3 and 4 for the Steelers? Nobody could answer with confidence. That has completely flipped this offseason. The front office went out and traded for Michael Pittman Jr., a proven, physical, veteran receiver who instantly becomes one of the top options in this offense. Then, on top of that, the Steelers used 2 separate draft picks on wide receivers this year, adding real long-term talent and legitimate competition to a room that used to be paper-thin. So now, instead of one guy carrying the entire passing game on his back, Pittsburgh actually has depth. Real, honest-to-goodness depth. And that depth is exactly why the battle for WR3 has become the most compelling storyline of this entire training camp build-up. So who is training with this route-running coach everybody keeps talking about? His name is James Everett Jr. around the league, and especially in Pittsburgh, he's known simply as the route god. And if that nickname sounds a little dramatic, wait until you hear his resume. This is the same trainer who has worked with an incredible list of Steelers wide receivers over the years. Antonio Brown back, when he was one of the most dangerous route runners alive, before everything went sideways with him. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. This man has essentially had his hands on every notable Steelers wide receiver of the last decade. So when word got out that Roman Wilson and rookie Jeremy Bernard were spending their offseason grinding with the route god, that is not a small thing. That is a signal. That is two players who understand exactly what is at stake and who refuse to leave anything to chance. And here's the part that makes this even better. These two aren't just training side by side out of necessity. They're building real chemistry. Every clip that comes out of this training facility shows the same thing. Wilson and Bernard together, pushing each other, encouraging each other, competing hard, but clearly building a friendship in the process. In a league where competition for roster spots can get ugly and guys can turn cold toward each other, watching these two grind together and actually seem to enjoy each other's company says a lot about the character in that receiver room. This is the kind of camaraderie that translates onto the field once the lights come on in September. Let's talk about Roman Wilson first, because for him, this summer is genuinely put up or shut up time. Wilson came out of Michigan with a national championship on his resume and all the physical tools you could ask for. Blazing speed, explosive acceleration, the kind of traits that make scouts drool on draft night. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Raw talent only gets you so far in this league, especially when you're catching passes from a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, a guy who has built his entire Hall of Fame career on precision and trust. Rodgers does not throw to receivers who are in the wrong spot. He throws to where the route is supposed to end, and if you're not there, that's on you. And that's exactly what happened last season. Remember the game against the Cincinnati Bengals, that dominant 34-12 win. There was a critical 3rd and goal situation, and Wilson ran a route that came up short of where it needed to be. Rodgers had to fire the ball to a spot deeper than where Wilson actually was. The timing fell apart, and the drive didn't end in the end zone. You could see the frustration on Rodgers' face in real time. That's the kind of moment that sticks with a quarterback. That's the kind of moment that makes a quarterback hesitant to target you the next time the game is on the line. So when people ask why Wilson would spend his offseason with a route-running specialist instead of just resting up before camp, this is exactly why. He knows he has the wheels. He knows he has the hands. What he needs now is precision, discipline, and the kind of route-running IQ that turns a track star into a true NFL receiver. The route god is here to close that gap. Now let's flip over to the rookie. And honestly, this might be the most exciting name in this entire story, Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. Here's a stat that should stop you in your tracks. Bernard is the highest wide receiver Pittsburgh has drafted since 2006. And who was that receiver back in 2006? Santonio Holmes. Think about that for a second. Santonio Holmes went on to become a Super Bowl MVP for this franchise. That is the company Jeremy Bernard is being mentioned alongside, just based on draft capital alone. That's not pressure you put on just any prospect. And by every account coming out of this offseason, Bernard looks like he's built for exactly this moment. Scouts and analysts are already calling him one of the most polished, most pro-ready receivers in this entire draft class. This is a guy who is described as an absolute technician, someone who understands route concepts and defensive leverage at a level way beyond most rookies. But here's the thing about college production. It doesn't automatically transfer to Sundays. Going from dominating Saturday afternoons in the SEC to earning the trust of a surgical, demanding veteran quarterback in the NFL is a completely different challenge. That's exactly why this extra work with the route god matters so much for him. It's not about fixing a weakness. It's about accelerating an already strong foundation so he can hit the ground running instead of needing an entire rookie season to catch up. And can we talk about how this kid looks physically right now? If you've seen the photos and clips circulating from this training, Bernard looks like he's added serious size since the draft. He was listed at right around 206 pounds coming out of Alabama, but he looks like he's carrying a lot more mass than that now, and he's over 6 feet tall. This is not some small slot receiver. This is a big, physical target who moves like someone way smaller than his frame would suggest. People around the building have started comparing his combination of size and fluid movement to a young Deebo Samuel, except with more advanced technical route running already in the tank. Let that sink in for a second. That's an incredibly high bar of a comparison for a rookie who hasn't even played a single regular season snap yet. And it's not just talk. Look at what he actually did at Alabama last season. 64 receptions, 862 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. That is legitimate, proven production against SEC competition, arguably the toughest conference in all of college football. Speed was never going to be the calling card for a receiver built like this, and that's completely fine because his game isn't built on outrunning cornerbacks. It's built on precision, physicality, and the kind of technical skill that route-running coaches dream about working with. His biggest hurdle now isn't learning how to run a route. It's learning how to read NFL zone defenses on the fly, which is one of the toughest adjustments every single rookie receiver has to make, no matter how talented they are coming in. Now here's your question of the day, and I really want you to sound off on this one in the comments. Between Roman Wilson and Jeremy Bernard, who do you think actually wins the WR3 job once real pads come on and the games start counting? Is it the proven speed and big play upside of Wilson, a guy who already has an NFL season under his belt? Or is it the polish, the size, and the sky-high college production of the rookie in Bernard? Drop your pick in the comments below, because I have seen fans split right down the middle on this one, and I want to know exactly where you stand. Here's why this competition is such a massive win for the Steelers no matter how it plays out. Depth wins championships in this league. Every single year, we watch contending teams get derailed because their WR2 or WR3 gets hurt in October, and there's nobody behind them who can step up. Pittsburgh is actively insuring themselves against that exact disaster right now. In July, months before it could ever become a problem. If Michael Pittman Jr. or the top rookie receiver goes down with an injury during the season, the Steelers won't be scrambling. They'll have a receiver who has been grinding with one of the best route-running specialists in the country, sharpening exactly the skills needed to step into a bigger role without missing a beat. That is the kind of quiet, behind-the-scenes preparation that separates organized franchises from chaotic ones. And there's something else worth mentioning here, because it speaks to the mentality in that locker room right now. There was a story not long ago where a former Steelers linebacker publicly pointed out that a lot of rookies waste this exact window of time before training camp. They take it easy. They treat it like a vacation instead of an opportunity. So it says a great deal about both Wilson and Bernard that instead of coasting into camp, they went out and sought extra coaching on their own. Nobody forced them to find the route God. Nobody made this mandatory. They chose to put in the work because they understand what's on the line this season, with Aaron Rodgers entering what could be one of the final chapters of his career and the Steelers clearly building a roster around making a real playoff push. So here's where things stand heading into training camp. Roman Wilson has all the physical talent in the world, but needs to prove he can be trusted in the biggest moments, especially with a quarterback who does not tolerate mental errors. Jeremy Bernard is arriving with a pedigree that hasn't been seen in Pittsburgh at the wide receiver position since Santonio Holmes, and he looks the part physically in every single clip we've seen this offseason. Both of them spent their summer with the same legendary route-running coach who has shaped nearly every great Steelers receiver over the last decade. And somehow, in the middle of a genuine job competition, these two have built real camaraderie instead of animosity. This is exactly the kind of story that gets buried under bigger headlines during the offseason, but it might end up mattering more than almost anything else once the season actually starts. Because if either Michael Pittman Jr. or one of the top rookie receivers misses time, the entire trajectory of the Steelers season could come down to whichever one of these two guys, Wilson or Bernard, is more ready to step up when the lights come on. Let me know down in the comments which one of these two you're more excited to watch once training camp officially opens. Thank you so much for being here and following along with everything happening with this team. We'll have more updates as camp gets closer, so stay tuned, and I'll talk to you again very soon.